welcome to this podcast organized by the European Financial Reporting Advisory Group. My name is Cécile Etevenot, Communication and Media Manager at EFRAG, and I will host this podcast. In this episode, we will explain and discuss the interesting project of the IASB Disclosure Requirements in IFRS Standards. We will present the objective of our field testing. Today, to discuss this topic, I have with me Catherine Schöne, EFRAG Project Director, Frédéric Ferreira, Senior Technical Manager at EFRAG, and Pierre van Vie, EFRAG Tech Member and IFRS expert at EY France. Now, Frédéric, could you give us a bit of context on this IASB project?
Thank you, Cécile. It is important to remember that the project was launched in response to the Principles of Disclosure, DP, and it tries to address three main concerns. Firstly, that not enough relevant information is provided. Secondly, that the information provided is irrelevant, and that ineffective communication of the information provided is taking place. So this project aims to provide internal guidance for the IASB when they draft disclosure requirements in future. So the approach is that they will provide us with disclosure objectives that has to be met rather than a list of items that should be provided. The overall objectives are supplemented by specific objectives in certain cases. However, to meet these, judgment will have to be applied at period end. The ED also provides some suggested items which you can consider when you look at how to meet these objectives. However, these suggested items you do not have to meet. You only need to meet the objectives overall. So I think it's quite important to remember that a checklist approach will no longer be possible, Cécile.
Right. So now we have a clear context. Thank you, Frédéric. But could you present the project itself, its purpose and the implications it may have?
So the full name of the exposure draft is Disclosure Requirements in IFRS Standards, a Pilot Approach. So quite a mouthful. It was issued in March 2021 with a 6-month notice period ending 21 October 2021. So the ED does two things. It describes the IASB's approach to develop disclosures, and this provides stakeholders with an opportunity to comment on this internal approach. It's important to note that there was controversy within the IASB itself, and there were some concerns about auditability and enforceability. Secondly, the ED also redrafts the disclosure requirements we currently have in IAS 19 about employee benefits and IFRS 13 on fair value measurement. So EFRAG issued its draft comment letter beginning of May, and while we welcome the IASB's efforts to improve the relevance of disclosures, that is something we always support, and we also support the fact that the IASB is giving more prominence to disclosure objectives. However, we think this more judgmental approach requires field testing. The field testing is really essential to address concerns about comparability and whether we need a set of minimum disclosures, as well as auditability and enforceability.
Well, thank you for all those details, but Frédéric, could you tell us what does EFRAG expect from stakeholders with this field test? What would it mean to participate in field work?
Yes, Cécile, I think it can sound a bit scary when we throw around this term field test. Firstly, it's important to note that preparers will have a choice of which standard they want to apply, so either IAS 19 or IFRS 13 or even both. Then we will ask them to mock up the disclosures. Now, what do we mean by that? It is basically taking the information they have currently, looking at the new requirements and see how their disclosures will change. The objective is not to find perfect numbers. It's rather that the participants understand the guidance, that they consider any changes they would require to their processes and systems, as well as to get an idea about the costs and benefits. After the mock-up of the disclosures, there's also a questionnaire relating to the aspects around application and how this new process worked for them. Optionally, there's also a conversation with EFRAG and IASB staff around the experience. What practical issues did they experience, and do they have any suggested solutions to overcome those? Lastly, we're also considering a meeting with participants so that they can share experiences amongst each other as well as with ourselves and the IASB. It is very important to us that we get participants to this field test, and we are willing to work with anything that they can provide us. We want them to achieve the best result possible based on their available resources. So some participants can provide us with more or less information or more or less detail.
Thank you. Now the objective of the field test is quite clear. But is the field test addressed to a precise category of stakeholders? So in other words, who should participate? Maybe Katrine, you could answer?
Yes, we would like to include different industries as well as small and medium-sized companies in the test to be able to address their needs in the final comment letter. For IFRS 13, we have financial institutions and real estate industry in mind. However, many corporates measure items at fair value or have employee benefits, so all kinds of corporates are welcome for field testing. EFRAG is bundling European views and then expresses support or concerns prominently to the IASB. Therefore, it is very useful to have feedback from several European preparers, as these would add weight to the feedback we will send to the IASB. And it can really be interesting to interact with the IASB and as well with us.
Great. Now, Pierre, as our guest speaker and IFRS expert, could you give us your input on the project Katrine and Frédéric just presented?
Thanks, Cécile. First of all, I certainly agree with everything that was said. I would add that I do think it is very important that as many preparers as possible participate in this field test. We all know how important relevant disclosures are for good financial reporting, and yet, as was said, we have heard for years now, particularly from users and regulators, that financial statements do not provide enough relevant information and contain too much irrelevant information. So this is commonly referred to as the disclosure problem. What is really wanted is entity-specific disclosures that are tailored to the entity's specific facts and circumstances for a particular reporting date and provide relevant insights, for example, into the measurement uncertainties. By developing those objective-based disclosures, this exposure draft does try to achieve that. But as Frédéric said, it will require a lot of judgment from all stakeholders, preparers and auditors, as well as regulators, to decide what is needed and what is enough.
Right. So if I understand correctly, the project aims for the greater good, but it needs to be treated with great care or there could be consequences.
Indeed. So many stakeholders, including 3 IASB board members, have strong concerns about these proposals. In their view, developing objective-based disclosure requirements without requiring minimum disclosures of specific items will increase enforcement challenges and also be more burdensome for preparers of financial statements. And it will also impair comparability, presumably, for users of financial statements by introducing a more flexible approach to disclosures. Well, on the other hand, many others conversely believe this is a game changer. And this is what is needed to get rid of the disclosure checklist approach and solve the so-called disclosure problem. So those proponents observe that ever since the IASB became aware in 2013 of the difficulties in applying the concept of materiality in the preparations of notes, a lot has been done, including 4 amendments to IS1 and IS8 and the publication of detailed educational guidance and case studies, and yet enhancements to the relevance of the disclosures have not met the expectations. So because these views are so different, so opposite, it is really important to test these proposals in real life situations before forming an informed opinion on this issue and reverting to the IASB. So these proposals may shape the future of all standards, not just a few, because all standards include disclosure requirements. So it is really critical that as many stakeholders participate in this field test and tell us, based on their experience in applying the proposals, whether the ED is going in the right direction or conversely is entirely missing its objective.
Well, thank you, Frédéric, Catherine, and Pierre, for introducing us to the IASB project Disclosure Requirements in IFRS Standards and sharing your views on it. EFRAG's draft comment letter, as well as the invitation in the field test, are available on our website, www.efrag.org, and we warmly invite you to share your views by mid-October 2021. This podcast will be available on our website, on our YouTube channel, and on Spotify. Do not hesitate to like it, share it, and leave us a comment. Thank you for joining us.